Florida traveling to Kentucky. Do you realize that Kentucky has beaten Florida the last 2 years, and the last time that Kentucky beat Florida 3 times in a row, 1948 to 1951, and you know who the head coach of the Wildcats was back then? It was Bear Bryant, the guy that Mark Stoops just passed last year to be the all-time winningest head coach of the Kentucky Wildcats program. What this win would mean for Kentucky is that no longer are you looked at as, hey, the basketball school that just happens to have a good football team every now and then. No. This means that you will have solidly surpassed Florida in the hierarchy of the SEC in football. You will own them. You will have beat them 3 years in a row. So Kentucky, it's time. It's time for you to step up. You have them at home. You have them at Kroger Field. Early kickoff. Mark Stoops says he has full confidence in you guys to get up and pound some beers, to just take down some brewskis and get ready for a big matchup in Lexington. The way they're going to have to win this football game, and this is like two teams looking in the mirror. Florida and Kentucky both want to run the football and play really aggressive on defense. I mean, they really, really do. And whoever runs the football better and helps their quarterback, their transfer quarterbacks with a lot of history behind them that have played, honestly, at varying levels each both this year and also in their past, I think that is going to be the secret of this ball game. Who can run it, and who's going to be prepared to stop the run? You've got Florida that overall has the 5th best defense when it comes to yards per game. They're number 1 in the SEC in that metric, and they have the 17th best scoring defense in the entire country, giving up 13.5 points per game, right there tied with Alabama. Georgia's number 1 in the league with 11.3. Kentucky has scored 28 points in each of its first 4 games. That is the first time that Kentucky has done so since 2007. So for all the Kentucky fans out there saying, oh, Devin Leary's not playing how we thought, he's turning the ball over too much, guess what Mark Stoops has built this team into? He's built this team into a offense and defense and special teams that is complementary enough to each other that they are putting up points. I don't care how they're doing, they're putting up points. 28 points in the first 4 games. That's the first time Kentucky has done that since 2007. Okay, Kentucky, even with Will Levis last year, who many thought was going to be a first-round pick before he slipped into the second round. Guys, many people thought that offense was just going to explode, and they had times where they had lapses and they just didn't score in games. The offensive line could possibly get Kenneth Horsey back. So what this would mean for Kentucky is taking a step up in the SEC hierarchy of football. It would mean making good on the promise that Mark Stoops has been telling, because when he recruited Devin Leary, when he's recruited some of these guys in the transfer portal, he said, hey, we are just one guy away from becoming a team that can compete year in and year out in the SEC here. And Florida, even with all their shortcomings right now, not the Florida roster of old, it is still, if Kentucky beats them 3 years in a row, it is a shift, a paradigm shift here in the SEC, where Kentucky will now own this, what is a rivalry. I know Florida fans want to say, it's not a rivalry, they won 31 years in a row. Yeah, but in the last 5 years, Kentucky's won 3 of them, and they've won 2 straight. So that's what it would mean for Kentucky. For Florida, it would mean that Billy Napier is ahead of schedule. I said going into this year, if Billy Napier finds a way to win 8 games, he should be the national coach of the year, because I don't think Florida has got nearly the amount of talent on the outside that they need to compete. They've got young guys in Eugene Wilson. He's banged up with a collarbone right now, one of their best playmakers. Ricky Pearsall is playing just absolutely out of his mind. Okay, but he's going to have a tough test with Andrew Phillips and Maxwell Hairston on the other side. Maxwell Hairston just, he's looking like the best corner in college football right now. Took 2 tutties to the house against Vanderbilt, picked the ball off. He's got 3 picks on the year. But Andrew Phillips, when you talk about, how how he's being able to perform. He's a veteran there, and he's right there behind Maxwell Hairston and how he's performing. So they got two really solid corners on that Kentucky secondary. It's going to really challenge Florida to be able to win one-on-one matchups on the outside. You know that Kentucky run defense is going to be sound. They have not allowed 100 yards rushing in a game this year. I don't care who you're playing. I don't care who it is against. When you do not allow a team to rush for 100 yards, you are playing defense at an elite level in terms of your gap responsibilities in the run game. Mark Stoops is going to have a sound defense. They're allowing 15.5 points a game. That's 21st in the country, and they do not allow teams to run the football on them, plain and simple. And that is what Trevor Etienne and the Florida Gators are going to want to do with that gap scheme that they have. They also vary up their run scheme, their zone schemes pretty well as well, having split zone, also, full zone bluff, all these different kind of things that they throw at you. Billy Napier does a good job of creating angles in the run game and trying to force people to misfit gaps. He does a really good job with that. Big question for Florida's run game. Will they have Kinsley Aguakon there? He is kind of the heart and soul, makes that offense roll. But Trevor Etienne, which one are we going to see out of him and Montrell Johnson? Are we going to see the version versus Tennessee where he had 172 yards rushing on 23 carries, or are we going to see the version of Etienne and Johnson against Utah that offensive line got physically dominated up front, and they combined for 10 carries for 31 yards? I think it'll be somewhere in the middle. I don't think they'll dominate Kentucky running the football. If they do, then it's over with. It's curtains. Whoever runs the football better in this game is going to win. This is going to be a field position, ball possession, who runs the football better game early on in Lexington. And what it would mean for Florida, it would mean that Billy Napier has things ahead of schedule and that he is going to have even more momentum on the recruiting trail for a really good class that he has right now, leading into a 2024 season with just an absolutely murderous schedule, and could possibly be inching closer to getting Florida back to where it needs to be. It would also mean that Florida is a real threat in the East, and that game in Jacksonville, you never know what's happened, because they will have beaten Tennessee and they will have beaten Kentucky, two things that they did not do in the previous years there. So hey, it's a high stakes game for both of these teams.